Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the Shimmerz Color Kitz collection for February. I probably should have used the papers and the paints to make a Valentine's Day layout, or at least a love-themed layout. But when I saw these beautiful flowers that were on one of the pattern papers, I couldn't help but fussy cut them out. And then they were giving me such tropical vibes that I decided that I was going to make this a tropical layout. I'm going to paint a lot of the flowers pink, but I'm also going to add in some yellow and orange ones in a little while. I'm using 4 different colors of pink to color the flowers. I used Coloringz in a bright fuchsia. That's the paint that's all the way on the left. The next paint to the right is a Vibez called Think Pink. That's the brand new color. Those 2 colors are from the current kit. I also added in a Spritz. That's the next color to the right. That's in Cotton Candy. And then to the right of that is another Spritz called Taffy Hour, and that is in this month's kit. I'm painting all of the flowers, regardless of what color they are, in kind of the same way. I am picking a darker color and painting every other section of the flower in with a darker color. And then I'm painting the remaining sections with a lighter color. Some of the flowers are going to be more fuchsia. I make them a little bit darker, and then other flowers I use the lighter colors of pink to make them a little bit lighter overall. The flower that I'm painting now isn't a complete flower. I cut out every flower that was on the page, whether it was a whole flower or most of a flower, and in some cases even a little bit of a flower, because I wanted to make use of these flowers not only on this layout, but also on my second layout for the month. I really, really like them. And I used up every single flower except for half of one. I'm going back into the flower now, and I'm adding a little bit more paint around the edge of the center of the flower. I think that it helps to make the flower look a little bit more dimensional. I'm just using a small bit of paint. I'm not layering it on really thickly. And I just like the way it gives a darker look to the center of the flower, which is the way flowers look when you look at them usually. I'm not expecting my flowers to look totally realistic, but I do like to add little touches that, to me, make them look a little more lifelike. Now I'm painting some of the flowers yellow. For these flowers, I decided to take the lighter color, and in this case, it's a color splash called Squeeze the Day, and then paint it on the entire flower. And then later go back in with the slightly darker color, which is a Shimmerz called Bumbly, and continue with that same idea of painting every other section of the flower with the darker color. So even though the whole flower is yellow, you could still see some variation in it. And then I once again add a little bit of extra color down by the center of all of the petals, again to try to add some dimension to the flowers. I knew I wanted to make some of the flowers orange, and I didn't have the color orange I was looking for, but I thought that I could probably mix it with some of the colors I already had. For the orange flowers, I used the yellow that was already on my glass mat, and then I added in some of Buddy's favorite color. That's a Shimmerz from this month's kit, and some marigold, which is also a Shimmerz. Those are on the right-hand side of my mat, and I love the deep, rich color of the Buddy's favorite color. And I did the same thing with the orange flowers. I alternated between having darker sections and lighter sections. So since this is a tropical layout, I needed lots of tropical leaves, so I used a lot of dyes that are in my stash. I don't know the manufacturer of all of the dyes. However, I will put any information I have about the dyes I use in the description box. I cut all of these leaves out of an inexpensive cold press watercolor paper. It's 140-pound paper. And then I began dipping my leaves into a number of different colors. So I started off with a Spritz called Bamboo Leaf, and I'm also using my color splash in Squeeze the Day again. And then I started adding in other colors of green. I used a Spritz called Olive Branch, And then I also used a Vibez called Green Tide Monster. I really liked the Green Tide Monster because that had a little bit more of a bluish look to it. And I liked the way there were some leaves that looked a little bit more yellowish green and some that looked a little more bluish green. Then I added lots and lots of splatters in all the different colors of green. And I always love splatters, but I really think that the splatters made these leaves look more realistic. When the leaves were completely dry, I added some Liquitex gel medium. This is gloss medium. And I thought that this really gave the leaves that nice shine that tropical leaves have. And it also, I think, accentuated all of the colors, really brought out all those beautiful Shimmerz colors that these leaves have. So I know there's a lot of mixed media on this layout. I didn't want to cut any major thing out, but I understand some people might not want to watch so much mixed media, so please feel free to just fast forward to the part that you want to watch. I just didn't want to leave anybody wondering how I created something. To contrast with the flowers and the leaves, I decided to make a blue background. I'm making a diagonal of color from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner. This is a piece of 120-pound smooth white cardstock. I've already added some Liquitex white gesso to the surface and allowed it to dry. I'm using the packaging technique and a color splash spray called Sea Breeze, and I'm adding several layers of color. I know that those flowers are on the larger side and the leaves are on the larger side, so I wanted to make this area of color on the larger side too. Sometimes I totally underestimate how many embellishments I'm going to put on my layout, and then the embellishments cover up the majority of the mixed media background. So I end up having to add more mixed media after I add the embellishments, and I don't really like to do that. So this time I'm trying to plan ahead and make a very large area that I can add lots of embellishments to. Now I'm adding lots and lots of splatters to the background. I love the random look of splatters, so I make sure that I have quite a few, especially around the outside edge of the area of color. And then I was thinking, I don't think that the color is taking up enough room on the background, so I decided to make it just a little bit larger and then also add a little bit in the upper right-hand corner for a small cluster that I'm going to add there. Now I'm adding in another color. This is a Creamies. This is Boogie Boardin Blue. It's a beautiful teal color. I'm once again using the packaging technique. I love the way this color is so tropical looking too, and I think that it has the same level of intensity and brightness as the other colors that I plan to use on the page. For the Creamies, they come dry and you add some water to them to activate the color. So you could see that I'm using my spray bottle, spraying a little bit of color in, and then transferring that color to my packaging. I feel like I use a lot of different colors and types of Shimmerz paints on this layout. The vast majority of the paints that I used, I received in recent color kits. In the color kits, you get paints, embellishments, and accessories all together. And in addition to the color kits, if there are other colors you would like to have, you can also order paints individually on the Shimmerz website. And I always forget to mention this until the very end, but when you place an order with Shimmerz Paints, if you use my name in the comments box, you'll receive a free gift. Here I'm adding lots of splatters of the Boogie Boardin Blue, and then I added some splatters from a color splash spray called Swoon in the Lagoon. I really like this color. I thought it went along well with the other two colors, so I added just a couple of splatters of this color as well. Now I'm going to add some modeling paste to the background. I could swear I had lots of modeling paste. I don't know if I used it up and didn't realize it or if I have it stashed somewhere, but I'm using what's left of a tube of modeling paste from Finnabair. And then I also added in some heavy body white acrylic paint. I like the way adding the white paint makes the modeling paste a nice bright white. It does make the modeling paste a little bit thinner. I didn't have any difficulty with spreading this mixture through my stencil, but it's just something to keep in mind. The stencil I'm using here is from Dress My Craft. It's called Splatter with Lines. I have quite a few favorite stencils, but I think this is definitely in the top 10. I love the grid lines on this one. I tilted the stencil so that those squares would be on an angle. I also added some of the stenciling to that top area where I'm going to add a small cluster. When I moved the stencil, I tried to line it up with the original stenciling that I did. In some cases, it worked out fine. In other cases, I was a little bit off, but I don't think you can really tell in the final product. I would recommend that if you do add paint to your modeling paste that you wash your stencil right away. I had a little bit of trouble getting some of the paint off of the stencil. I was able to get most of it off in the end, but I do like my stencils to be clean. So next time I'll make sure that I wash it right away. And now I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint to add some splatters. When I tap on that base of the straw with my finger, the splatters are a little bit bigger, and when I use scissors, the splatters are a little bit smaller, so I wanted to do a little of each. I also wanted to add in a few black splatters, but not too many, and I wanted them to be on the smaller side, so I'm using my scissors to make those splatters. There are some black lines in the flowers and also some of the embellishments that I'm going to use. So I was considering doing some stamping on the background, but then I decided that I really wanted this layout to be very bright. So I decided that I was just going to add little touches of black splatters, and I always love black splatters on my layouts. I have finally finished with all of my mixed media. I did add some paint to the two embellishments to the left of my mat. Off camera, there's a banner and there's also a little pot of flowers. I just simply used the same thin brush that I used earlier, and I colored in each of the hearts and flowers on the two different embellishments. And for that, I used the same paints that I used earlier. Now I'm adding some of these foam dots to some of the flowers and to the banner. And it was kind of a mistake to use foam dots. I'll explain why in a second. This is my photo. I matted it on some white cardstock, and then I popped that up using some fun foam. And now I'm going to begin arranging all of those flowers on the background. I want to make sure that I have the yellow flowers spread out and the orange flowers spread out, not too many in one spot. And then I also have a couple of different shades of pink on the flowers, so I'm making sure that those are spread out somewhat evenly across the layout. Well, earlier I put a foam dot on each of the 5 petals of a couple of the flowers, and then I stopped because I wasn't really sure where on the layout I would want dimension and where I would not want to have dimension, because I might want one of the flowers underneath another flower. So I pulled up all of the tabs on those foam squares, and they stick so well. And I love moving things around the layout. Sometimes I'll move something over a very small amount, but I do like the flexibility to be able to experiment with different placements and move things around. And those foam dots just stick too well. And it was not only hard to move the flowers around, it was also difficult to get the leaves that I want to place among all the flowers underneath them. So I think in the future I'm going to go back to using fun foam with my ATG adhesive, because that's a lot more flexible and that suits my style of working a little bit better. Not to say that I never want to use foam dots, but definitely not when I'm trying to layer things on top of each other or when I want to play around with the composition more. The gel medium on the leaves is dry, so now I'm tucking them behind the flowers. I don't have any clear plan. I just know that I want to make sure that I have a balance between large leaves and smaller leaves in each part of the layout. Here you could see I'm kind of struggling to get that large leaf underneath the orange flower. But in the end, I was able to work with all of those flowers that had the pop dots on them. Nothing ripped or got ruined. It was just not something that I was used to. I'm going to include this cute little pot of flowers among all of the other flowers. I just thought it helped to break up the space a little bit and have something a little bit different there. I also liked the way most of it was white with just little touches of the pink and the green on that embellishment. I really went overboard making leaves. Usually I make a lot of embellishments thinking I'll never use all of these up, and then I end up using them all. In this case, I had quite a few leaves left over, which surprised me, but I will definitely use those on another layout. I used ATG adhesive and attached all of the leaves down. And now I'm using a pop dot to attach down one of the epoxy dots. I love those. That's in the upper right-hand corner. I'm adding some hearts to the layout. Those are die cut hearts. So I figured I have the one epoxy dot with the pink heart, and then I added 2 other hearts in other places on the layout. I'm also going to add this sentiment, XOXO, to the layout. I put it on a little bit of thicker cardstock because I wanted to pop it up on some foam. This time I'm using the fun foam, and that's a good thing because I do move it around quite a bit. Everything so far is from the kit. I decided to bring in a title from my stash. It says, "Today it's green." It was the perfect color for this layout. And then I wanted to put the XOXO on top of it so it would kind of say like "Love Today." But it just didn't fit there. It fits so nicely underneath it. So I decided to go with that placement of XOXO instead. I added a leaf and a flower in the lower left-hand corner just so that it would have a relationship to the rest of the layout. And then I just felt like I had to add some sparkle and shine to the centers of the flowers. I searched through my stash looking for the tiniest jewels that I had in pink, yellow, orange, and then I also used some clear jewels as well. These are all self-adhesive, and I was placing them on those circles that were on the centers of the flowers. For the most part, I matched the color of jewels to the color of the flower, but I did use some clear jewels on some of the light pink flowers just to kind of mix it up a little bit. I didn't want all the same color pink jewels on all the flowers because I didn't have just the right color for those light pink flowers. Those tweezers came in really handy to move those jewels around. My fingers are a little bit too big for jewels that are that small. I found these bright pink embellishments in my stash. At first, I thought they matched the hearts, but they were just a little bit too bright. I don't know if you can see that on camera. So later on, I do end up switching those out for something a little bit more subtle. I placed some very tiny self-adhesive pearls on all of the hearts that are on the banner and on the centers of all of the flowers in the flower pot embellishment. And I liked the color of those pearls, so I decided to switch out those bright pink embellishments for some of the pearls that were the same color as the smaller ones that I used on the layout. Then I was thinking that I didn't have any pearls in the lower left-hand corner. Not that I had to have pearls there, but it dawned on me that I could add some pearls to either side of the sentiment that's there. And then I used just a couple of these sequins. These are white sequins. They have kind of a pinkish cast to them. To the layout, I'm placing them in a couple of spots around the outside and inside of that large cluster. And that's the last touch. This layout is complete. Here are some close-ups. This was quite a long video. Thank you so much for sticking with me till the very end of this one. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I certainly had a lot of fun making the layout. Please don't forget that when you place an order with Shimmerz Paints, if you use my name in the comments, you'll receive a free gift. The color kits for February are still available on the Shimmerz website, and you'll find the link to the Shimmerz website in the description box. Thanks again for watching. I'll have some new videos up on my channel very soon. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.